Yo, it's Graham Ledger. It's time to get totally tubular. So chill out. This radical, bodacious rewind starts right now.
Don't you forget about me. And don't you forget about me.
Bye. Oh, I need a drink.
Just suspect my emotion wandering, yeah.
16 Candles, so that's kind of the ending of 16 Candles. A happy ending. Girl gets boy. The scene, the poltergeist lady. I don't even know who that actress was, but the very diminutive one. And she says, she has that squeaky voice, have a good day. And walks off, and when she walks off, she squeaks. What a nice touch. Little touches like that, I just think are wonderful for a production like this. The song is that song, that was a clip, and then someone had put the song over it, but that song is in the movie. It's the Thompson Twins' If You Were Here, which a lot of people believe maybe was the greatest song by the Thompson Twins. Thompson Twins in 1984, which was when this movie came out, 16 Candles, was right in their heyday. Hold Me Now, I think that was a Thompson Twins song, if I remember correctly. But this scene, it is a clip from the movie, but as I said, somebody kind of superimposed the entire song over this, but the song is part of that scene. Is just dripping with young love. It's dripping with 1984, right down to his Porsche 944 in the back there. That guy, the actress, by the way, you'd think back then, I mean, a good-looking guy like that, he looks like the Marlboro Man. I've confused him with other actors before. Very good-looking guy. Apparently, he had a rather brief career in acting. I'll get into that in just a moment. His name is Michael Schoeffling, and he gets Molly Ringwald, or Molly Ringwald gets him in the movie, even though Anthony Michael Hall is all over Molly Ringwald, and I'll get into that in just a moment, especially with just a classic scene from the movie. But this movie really was the epitome of 1984. One of those, you went to the movies and you just kind of soaked it all in. Yeah, we were living 1984, but this kind of personified 1984. And we paid back then, by the way, about $2.50 for a movie ticket, which wasn't cheap back then. But movies and VHS tapes was all we had. That was pre-Blockbuster, by the way. Blockbuster didn't really exist. We used to go to a place called The Warehouse to rent VHS movies. And the movies were always, years and years behind the time. So if it was 1984, we were lucky to be getting, 1980 movies. So 1984, though, really for me, and I think for a lot of people who lived during that time, especially when you were in your 20s in the 1980s, maybe was the epitome of what 1980 life was all about. So I want you to, if you were there, if you weren't there, bear with me. But if you were there in 1984, if you lived somewhere in America in 1984, I want you to close your eyes right now. Close your eyes and step back in time to 1984. Okay, you can open your eyes. And when you open your eyes, you have to realize that 1984 was a brilliant time to be alive, but it was also a devastating time. AIDS had just arrived on the landscape in the United States and across the world, but primarily in the United States. And it had just been identified. And back then, I was a budding news writer. I wanted to be on TV, but I had to sow my oats, and I was a news writer for the CBS affiliate in San Diego, KFMB TV. And we were writing news stories about AIDS. I didn't know what in the wide world of sports AIDS. Nobody knew what AIDS was, but we knew it was a devastating disease. And that was when AIDS was in its infancy. We didn't know anything about it, and a lot of people did stupid things and said stupid things about AIDS and people who had AIDS, and I'm sure they regret it now because it was very myopic. The original Mac came out in 1984. Think about that. The Mac computer went on sale in 1984, and look at Apple now. The year 84, in the summer, we had the Olympics, if you'll recall, that were held in Los Angeles. And now this was fresh out of the boycott of the Summer Games in 1980 that Jimmy Carter decided to do when they were held in Russia. I can't even remember the reason. I think it was Russia's invasion of Afghanistan. Isn't that ironic? I think. But either way, we boycotted the Olympics, the Summer Olympics in 1980, so Russia said, the heck with you, or the Soviet Union, I should say. Back then it was still the USSR. Said, the heck with you, then we're not going to Los Angeles. But it was an interesting Summer Games because it was dominated by a guy named Carl Lewis. Anybody remember Carl Lewis? Carl Lewis remembers Carl Lewis, and there's a funny skit. If you have a minute, you want to dig it up on YouTube of Eddie Murphy, the actor Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murray was a baseball player. Eddie Murphy playing Carl Lewis in a little skit with Joe Piscopo, a classic. And ladies, in 84, you were wearing this, I thought it was horrendous. I never liked it. It was a drop waist dress. And from a guy's perspective, you couldn't see anything. You know, it was like this dress that was just like straight down, because what the designer did was to move the waist from the waist to basically the hips. So all it did was like hang straight, like it was hanging in a closet. And, if you're good looking and you're a lovely lady, you're going to look good in just about anything. But it really was, I think, an ugly period for me. I don't know about you, ladies. You let me know. You can email me at grahamledger411@gmail.com. You can tell me to go to hell. But I just think the drop waist dress was a good thing it was dropped in the end. Didn't last very long, thank goodness. And then the shoulder pads, I think, started to hit. On television, what were we watching in 1984? It was a thing called Cheers. Remember Cheers? What a great TV show. Still plays great today. Ronald Reagan won re-election. So he was going into his second term in late 1984. He won re-election in a landslide victory that probably will never be duplicated again. I believe, if I remember right, Ronald Reagan carried 49 states. The only state he didn't carry was Minnesota, which was Walter Mondale's state, the guy he was running against. A Dodge Ram pickup truck, you know what it cost in 1984? Sit down, $8,900. Gas, $1.10 a gallon, and a median priced home in 1984 was $72,000, and if you were paying rent, the average rent was about $350. So that's what 1984 was all, but it really wasn't just all that. It was just a magical time to be alive. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. By 1984, cocaine had really woven its way into popular culture. And I'm not advocating the use of cocaine, but if you talk about the 80s and you don't mention coke, you're lying to yourself. Cocaine played a role, not for everybody. There's a ton of people out there who didn't touch the stuff. And then there's a ton of people who dabbled in the stuff. And then there's a few who were hooked and probably overdosed and died because of it. But cocaine played a role, a major role for some people in the 1980s. People didn't, in some cases, didn't go out unless they had cocaine. People made a lot of money. People went to jail because of cocaine. But it played a a big role in the 1980s, and in particular 1984 was probably nearing the pinnacle of the partying times. You know, just coming out of the 70s, going into the early 80s, and you know, we were having a good time with cocaine or without cocaine, but it certainly played a role. And so 16 Candles didn't deal with drugs at all. It just dealt with what it was like to be in high school and to be in love in the 1980s. And this was John Hughes, directed by John Hughes. This was his first attempt at directing, the first of many smash hits, and now what I would consider time capsules. That's what 16 Candles is, the beginning of many time capsules, that timeless time capsules that John Hughes built us, that we can open up. Whoop. We're opening up this vault of 1984. Whoop. 16 Candles. There it is. It's a vault. It's a time capsule of what was going on in 19. Aren't we lucky to be able to open up this time capsule called 16 Candles and give us a peek back and let us go back in time to 1984. It was John Hughes' first of many, and of course John Hughes, in case you haven't put all this together, did many of these coming-of-age movies, is what people call them. In particular, Ferris Bueller's Day Off and The Breakfast Club were his. But this was his first attempt, and obviously he did pretty well. And Molly Ringwald would become one of his stars, and of course she was in Breakfast Club as well. And this was Molly Ringwald's, not her first role in front of the camera, but it was what I guess you would call maybe the breakout role. John Hughes actually wrote the script for this movie, 16 Candles, and he wrote it in 2 days, which would explain these wonderful lines like, "Hey, can I borrow your underwear for a few minutes?" Kind of indicative of script that's written in 10 days, or in 2 days. There's a great scene where Molly Ringwald and her friend go to the high school dance. And you know, the way high school dances were back then, I don't even know what they're like now. Do they still even have high school dances now? I don't know. I hope they do. But the geeks were on one side, and the football players on another, and the princesses were over here, and the so and so's over there, and there's a band playing. And so Molly Ringwald goes to the dance, and so does Anthony Michael Hall, because he's with the Geek Squad. And the Geek Squad in this movie is a large number. And so there's a collision here between Molly Ringwald, who she's in love with, and that's the Michael Schoflin person, and Anthony Michael Hall, who is all over Molly Ringwald. And it comes to a head during this scene at the dance in 16 Candles.
Dude, scope it out.
She doesn't look like a freshman.
Sophomore, dude, sophomore. Fully aged sophomore me. Do the bus together. Talk to her. Talk, dude. I have a relationship with her. Figured to like 17 digits.
You are such a liar.
We'll see about that, my man. By night's end, I predict me and her will interface. Check it out, Louise.
Pretty intense, huh? Over.
More action than Max over.
Alright. Need to come around. Crank that, sister!
What a great scene. Anthony Michael Hall, really, I don't know what became of him, but boy, he just was a great kid, geek actor. And yes, in the background they're playing distinctive sound of Oingo Boingo. Oingo Boingo, one of the many smash hit artists in this movie. I'll get into that in just a minute. But yes, by the way, among the geeks there on the far left, that was John Cusack. He was part of the Geek Squad in this movie. Spandau Ballet, the first song you probably recognized before Oingo Boingo, Spandau Ballet. What an emblematic song of 1983-84. I'm not sure if Spandau Ballet's True came out in 83-84, but it was right around that time. And Anthony Michael Hall really kind of steals that scene. It's just an innocent, sweet kind of scene where the geek doesn't really realize how big a geek he is, but who cares? Because he's having a good time and he's just being himself. And the annoyed look on Molly Ringwald's face is just one of those classic, because I could just see my sister with that same kind of look, or some ex-girlfriend of mine with that same, or maybe an ex-wife with that same kind of annoyed look. Without saying anything, she says a zillion words, right? Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald apparently did not like each other initially, and so director John Hughes took them out and to a record store. And yeah, record stores still existed in 1984, and they somehow bonded over music in the record store. A brilliant move by John Hughes on that one. And this Michael Shuffling, the good-looking dude, the Marlboro Man kind of guy in the movie. He made several films after this one, but then it looks like he just flat out walked away from Hollywood around 1990-91, didn't look back, and now the only reconnaissance I have on him is that he does custom carving in furniture, which is quite a departure from Tinseltown. This movie is, like many from John Hughes in the 1980s, buffeted by the music. And the music, in this case, you already heard Spandau Ballet, and you heard a little bit of Oingo Boingo. Stray Cats and Billy Idol also appear in this movie. What was, by the way, on the radio at the time, what were we listening to? You remember in 84? Oh, Sherrie by Steve Perry. Yeah, Journey, but at that point, Steve Perry had gone out on his own, so Oh, Sherrie was a Steve Perry production, not a Journey production. All Night Long by Lionel Richie. When Doves Cry by Prince, I believe that was the #1 song of 1984. And among the top 10 was one that got play after play after play on the radio, Ghostbusters. And of course the movie was a big hit around that same time as well. But Ghostbusters, the song, was a mainstay in 1984, especially, of course, around Halloween. If I could go back in time, it would be to 1984. So much occurred where I was at the time in San Diego. What a time to be alive in San Diego. It was just a brilliant time. And if I could go back, it would be 1984. But aren't we lucky to have films like 16 Candles, which to me is a timeless time capsule of 1984. I'm Graham Ledger. Later!
So true, funny how it seems, always in time, but never in line for dreams. Head over heels, went toe to toe. This is the sound of my soul. This is the sound of what This is the sound